Originally, I wanted to make a video about what are the elements that make up a good portrait. And in doing some research, I discovered that quite possibly there's not even a consensus on what's a portrait. So let's talk about it. Webster's dictionary says a portrait is a pictorial representation of a person, usually showing their face. So here's a portrait. Perfectly good portrait, nothing wrong with it. It's my son-in-law, and it's showing his face. Is it a great portrait? No, I wouldn't say so, but it does fit the definition of a portrait. The Oxford Dictionary said a portrait is a painting, drawing, or photograph of a person, especially the head and shoulders. Is this a great portrait? It fits the definition. I then found a definition that said a portrait is a dramatic representation of a character. Now look at this image by Gordon Parks. If you've never heard of Gordon Parks, you need to look him up. I wouldn't classify him as a portrait photographer. I would classify him as a man of many talents who did at times shoot portraits, but you need to look him up. However, look at this story. I believe this woman's name was Emma Watson, and Gordon was trying to do a takeoff of the painting by Grant Wood, American Gothic. Pretty famous painting. You can go back and research it. However, look at the flag behind Emma and the mops. He's trying to give you a visual of what he perceived that time in history to be when he took that image. And here's another one by Gordon. Same type of thing. They're both portraits, but now they're expanding on it to make them just excellent or great portraits. And we'll talk about why in just a moment. I ran across another definition that states a portrait refers to an artist's representation of an individual's persona. Creating a portrait is a complex task requiring skill, dedication, and hours of hard work. One of the people who I believe exemplifies this better or as well as anyone is a photographer by the name of Arnold Newman. Now this looks like a pretty simple portrait of a man who looks maybe a little confused. However, the lighting is very good. The overall portrait is very good. And you think, well, it's not really getting the persona of the man. What if I told you that's a portrait of Pablo Picasso? Would that change your perception of if Arnold Newman caught his persona or not? And what about this one? A man just sitting in a chair and you've got this string or rope, whatever it is, hanging down. What if I told you that's a portrait of Salvador Dali? Would you then think that's an excellent portrait? So Arnold was excellent at capturing people's persona. That's one of the elements of a good portrait. What about this image from photographer Gregory Heisler? Pretty straightforward, not much to the portrait. Simple black and white, good lighting. Did he catch the person's persona? That's O.J. Simpson. And what about this one by Danny DeVito? He uses visual cues because obviously if you know Danny DeVito, he's not the tallest man on earth, and he put him in a short chair. I don't know that I would have done that. Obviously Danny agreed to it because I'm sure Danny doesn't take himself that seriously. But he used Danny's height and put him in that chair as a visual cue to maybe catch something about Danny DeVito, and maybe more than his height. Maybe he wanted to bring out the fact that Danny doesn't take himself too seriously, and he put him in that chair. I don't know. I'm not the photographer. I'm not Danny, but just a guess. Do you need to smile in a good portrait? So far we haven't seen many smiles. Here's one. Nice smile, nice portrait. Do we need to smile? Not necessarily. Here's another one. Nice smile. Is this a better portrait or is this a better portrait? Same person. It's one of my grandchildren. Has a lot of the same visual cues. Which one's the better portrait? Certainly no smile here. This is an image by Vivian Maier, and I highly recommend you go and search out the documentary called Finding Vivian Maier. You'll find out that she was never discovered until after she passed away. And I'm sure most people would try to classify her as a street photographer, but she made some incredible portraits while working along the streets. And she did make some straight portraits, but I highly recommend you go and look up Vivian Maier and her work. Now let's discuss some of the other elements that make up a great portrait. So other than capturing someone's persona, what are some of the other elements that make up a great portrait? Well, there's visual cues. Think back to the Gordon Parks image of Emma Watson with the broom and the mop and the flag behind her. What was her story? The clothing she was wearing, the environment that she was in. Same with Vivian Maier. The clothing the people were wearing, the environment that they were in. What was their story? Those two elderly people walking along the street. What was their story? Vivian was great at that type of thing. Another person or another photographer who is excellent at this, I'm sure he doesn't want to classify himself as a portrait photographer or even a travel photographer. He's just a great photographer, and that's Steve McCurry. And I'm sure that you'll know his most famous image, or what I perceive as his most famous image, the Afghan girl. Look it up. You've probably seen it. But he uses clothing and environment about as well as anybody. Look at this one here. Very simple. Clothing and the eyes. That's a great portrait. What about this one? Maybe a takeoff of the Afghan girl, a younger girl. The clothing, the environment, the eyes. All great elements. And this one here, again, the clothing, the environment. You don't need to see the whole horse. You know the horse is there. But Steve does that as well as anyone. And this last one here, of a coal miner, where he brings it all together. Look at the details in his face, the smoke, the light that he's wearing on his head. You know right off what he is, even with the dirt on his face. Steve captures all that in his portraits. That is what makes a good portrait. One of the reasons why I make these videos is because it forces me to research and look at other photographers and their work. And most times when I do it, I'm greatly humbled because I see the work of people like Gordon Parks and Steve McCurry and Vivian Maier and Arnold Newman and all types of great photographers. And you get very humbled. And you go and you look at your own work and you think, boy, that was pretty good. And then you look at everybody else's and you think, well, maybe not so much. Maybe I have a long ways to go. But you do learn things like what elements make up a good portrait. So that's one of the reasons why I make these videos. I try at times to make them entertaining. I try at times to make them educational for you, since you're taking the time to watch them. And on that point, a lot of times I forget. I try to mention as much as I can think of it, but I really do appreciate all the people that do watch my videos and subscribers. And if you're not a subscriber, hey, hit the button, please. It helps me out a little bit. But I do appreciate all of you, and for the most part, I do try to answer every comment, at least hit a like, or try to answer their question. And that's one of the ways that I try to show that I do appreciate all the people that do watch. And I do have a handful of very loyal subscribers and people who watch my videos, and I mention a few of them by name. Occasionally I do, but I'm afraid I'll leave one out and then they'll feel offended, so I don't want to do that. But I know who you are. I know I have a handful of you, and I appreciate all of you. I know it takes time to watch these videos, so I do want to thank you. So in the meantime, just practice. Try to take some of the lessons that I tried to put in this video. Try to go out and search and put in some visual cues, and maybe it'll help you if you do try to take portraits from time to time. And I'll keep taking mine, and I'll keep trying to improve. And not just with portraits, but with street, with landscape, with sport photography, with my bird photography, whatever it is, I'm always trying to improve. And again, one of the ways I do improve is to force myself to go out and try to take some of these images so that I can make these videos. And I do enjoy, if you haven't watched the ones from Banff that I made recently, go back and check those out. I do occasionally take you along with my travels. But again, I do appreciate everyone. Thanks for watching. And until next time, take good care and good luck with your photography. Bye for now.